The Weeknd came out with a new album last week. And I need you to figure out what's happening with your tour. Hello, good people. Thank you so much for tuning in to the very first inaugural episode of Impossible, a variety podcast. This is going to be a place that we talk about a variety of things, and we have our first episode, not only ever of the central podcast, but also of the sub-series Beats Me. And shout out to my friend, if she is listening. I'm not going to tell her name on the air, but shout out to you for giving me the name of that, because I was trying to figure out what to name my podcast, and she kept coming up with like music puns and everything, and I went, well, I want to talk about quite a few things, so we'll name it that for the sub-series. So welcome to the first episode of Impossible and the sub-series Beats Me, where we're talking about music-related stuff. And today we've got quite a topic. We're going to be talking about the newest release from the Weeknd. We're going to get right on into it. So here's the deal for the album. This album is Dawn FM by The Weeknd. Real name, Abel Tesfaye. I usually, whenever I'm talking about him, I'm like, Abel. I never really call him The Weeknd. I almost call him like Abel, like he's my friend or anything. He's not my friend, but I kind of wish he was, unless he's not a good person. Either way, I do call him Abel because I do like what Abel says, and it's also weird to just say, hi, I really like The Weeknd. The Weeknd is a good singer. It's just weird to me, so I'm just going to call him Abel. So, in case you were wondering what his real name is, his real name's Abel Tesfaye. So the album that I'm talking about today is his 2022 early year release, Dawn FM, which is a follow-up album to his very successful After Hours, which came out in 2020 during like the very beginning of the pandemic, actually. And it had the song Blinding Lights on it, which was hugely successful in the United States, was charted all the way at the top, kind of like all the way through the year, I think, for a very long time. And so hugely successful. But I gotta rant for a second. Abel literally did not get nominated for a Grammy for Blinding Lights because I don't even know why. A lot of people speculate that because he did the Super Bowl halftime show, he did not get considered for a Grammy by the Academy, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you can like him, you can hate him, but the fact that one of the most successful songs didn't even get nominated for a Grammy is insane to me. Like, that's certifiably insane and should be illegal pretty much because, like, why can that happen? He literally performed at the Super Bowl halftime show. The freaking song got so big that he literally was on the Super Bowl halftime show, and it was insane. So it was charted at the top of the charts for like maybe a whole year or anything, and you're seriously not even going to nominate him for a Grammy? Like, how does that make any sense? And then I looked at all the other nominees on there, and I was like, that makes no sense. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Also, really funny story, really funny tidbit that I gotta tell you. By the way, if this person is listening to this, hi. I don't know why you're listening to this, but hi. Haven't heard from you in a while. But once upon a time, my ex-girlfriend actually hated the fact that I started listening to The Weeknd because I got into him like very, very quickly. And it was around when Starboy came out. My girlfriend at the time was kind of a bit religious, and she thought, because there's a lot in the earlier days of The Weeknd's lyrics and everything, there's a lot of talk about cheating and infidelity, and it's R&B lyrics. Like, not every R&B lyric is going to be the most deep thing in the world and everything, but basically it was a lot of like, I'm going to cheat, yada, 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 I'm going to cheat. That's a lot of what the early lyrics were for The Weeknd and everything. And she didn't like that. She thought that me listening to that was going to cause me to cheat on her, which is the funniest thing in the world. I'm not knocking religion at all. I just think it's really funny that that actually happened. Either way, that's my funny little bit. And I hate to break it to the person. If she's listening to this, then I'm very, very sorry, except I'm kind of not. I still listen to The Weeknd, obviously. I'm doing a review of it now, so yikes. But when it came to the prep to this album and everything for Dawn FM, there wasn't a whole lot to it. We got a little bit of a teaser, I think in August, maybe July. But what happened was Abel started posting stuff on social media and he said, screw it, The Dawn starts tonight. And people were like, The Dawn, is that a new album? What is going on? What is going on? And like they started freaking out and everything. And so they're freaking out and we see a trailer for what's happening. He doesn't post any captions on it, so it's very cryptic, very mysterious, but he doesn't post any captions on it. And when that happened, he started posting teasers for, I think, a music video that he was doing and everything. And so everyone's like, what's happening? New song, new song, new song, new song. Then he released, I think a few days afterwards, Take My Breath, which we were like, okay, we're getting new music like kind of shortly after he just did his Super Bowl performance. And the Take My Breath single was like the first thing that we heard from The Dawn, which is kind of interesting. And I will say that the extended version, which I'm going to also talk about on the album as well, is very interesting. And I honestly think it dives deeper into it almost kind of seems like he took the presumption of, oh, this is a Michael Jackson sounding like, and he just leaned into it so much more. Like if you thought that he sounded like Michael Jackson, like in the early days on Beauty Behind the Madness and everything, he just like straight up full-fledged like barges into that territory, especially with some other tracks on the album. The best way I can describe this album is like if you saw a neon sky or a neon sunset and everything and you go, oh shoot, I want to drive on a straight road for a while and just check that out and absolutely bathe myself in that atmosphere and everything. So you're like, I need to enjoy this with someone. So you grab your friends, you stop at the local gas station, you grab some snacks, whatever it may be, grab some Milk Duds like your boy does, and just take off on the road and keep driving. Now, when you're driving and everything, you're having a good time to begin with, but then you like start to really think about how you're feeling and everything, and the sunset's making you feel like weirdly sentimental and weirdly emotional, and you're like, you know how sometimes you think about deeper things off of very superficial things? Yeah, that's like what this album is, basically. And then you start to cry about it because you're overthinking it, right? And then because you're crying over it, it was an intense cry, so you drift off to sleep and you're tired. While you're driving out on the road and everything, you have to have your friend pick up the driving wheel, pick up the driving duties and everything for you because you cried quite a lot and you need to go to sleep. What I mean by that is that there are two themes that kind of came up on the album as I was listening, as I really deep dove into the lyrics before this episode. One, the topic of fear of death and kind of being afraid to accept that one's dying and walking into the light. And the second theme is being with someone romantically and not having enough time to really connect with them or really convey to them the true nature of how you felt and everything, which I think is really, really kind of interesting and powerful. The album cover that he has on his Dawn FM cover is a picture of Abel, and he's like aged up, and I don't know if what he did to like, he does this quite a bit, but I don't know what he did. I think he just like did his makeup and like dyed his hair, or maybe it's a wig. Either way, he looks old, and that's his that's what the album cover is. He actually did his album live stream with that look on of him as an old guy. And I was like, what? Now, I was like kind of not sure what it was about because I saw the album cover not really knowing what it was, and I kind of laughed a little bit because I was like, what is this album cover? When I hear Dawn FM, this is not what I think about. And it's just a picture of Abel Tesfaye, old like makeup and old image alteration and everything, and I'm like, this makes no sense, and I laughed about it. I'm not gonna lie to you. So I'm going to start with the nitpicky stuff because I like to end on a good note. I'm going to start with the nitpicky stuff. Personally, there are only a few things that I really think about this album. One, I think it's a little bit too long. And it's literally, so this album it's a 51, almost 52 minute album of 16 songs. It's a long album and everything. And I don't necessarily mind longer albums, but it's something that I am a little bit hesitant about because I feel like if an album's too long, it just drags out a little bit and drags out. Now, this isn't something that I don't think can't be pulled off and everything, but I just think it might have been like 2 or 3 tracks like too long and everything. I honestly think they could have gotten away with just doing like maybe 2 or 3 tracks left, just cutting those off of the record. The other thing is that Lil Wayne's feature on here is kind of off-putting to me. I don't really think I'm a fan of Lil Wayne that much. There's no instances of me like going out of my way and trying to listen to Lil Wayne. It just hasn't happened. He has a very kind of like nasally pointed voice and everything. And Abel's voice, he kind of sings a lot. It's like a very breathy type voice in some instances that he does and everything. He does a lot of kind of going back and forth between, it's almost like a mix type thing. I'm not the biggest vocal anatomy expert and everything, but I think he sings in like this kind of breathy mix that is very smooth and everything. I don't know how it feels on his voice and everything, but it sounds very smooth for the most part, and that's what he encapsulates with this whole record to begin with. It's this whole kind of sonic landscape of like beautiful synthwave sunsets, basically. And Lil Wayne, I feel like just doesn't really fit. Like, I just don't think he fits. Like, I think it's a little bit too abrasive for him to be on this track, in my opinion. Other than that, that's the only thing that I can think of for, like, songs on here that I'm like, oh, that's a lie. So, there's another song called How Do I Make You Love Me on here, and I don't really like the lyrics of this one. The reason I don't really like the lyrics of this one is because, I mean, based on the title of it, you could probably guess on why I don't like it. Kind of makes me a little bit unsettled a little bit because he says things along the lines of, I'll fix you mushroom tea. He says things in the chorus. He says, how do I make you love me? How do I make you fall for me? How do I make you want me and make it last eternally? It almost kind of seems a little bit too pushy for me. I don't really know what his intention was with it. I don't know if it was like anything malicious or anything. It's a little bit of an off-putting type, hey, I'm being too persistent type thing. Maybe it's just, it almost kind of seems like a desperation song type thing to me. I wasn't really too keen on it, but it's fine. It's one of the tracks that I would honestly be okay with leaving off the record as a whole. But now, we're going to talk about the cool things about this album and the good things about this album. So the album is obviously called Dawn FM, and the name and significance of Dawn FM is very kind of reminiscent of the themes that are brought up in this album. The themes that are brought up are topics about love and death. Basically, in part, one's life is ending, and you know how I was kind of saying at the beginning that it's like you're crying while you're watching a sunset and everything because you're thinking about stuff that got set off by a little tiny event. Basically, what it comes off to me as is it is very much like my time is ending, and Abel, or whoever the character is in this story, is going to be kind of thinking and reminiscing about what I did right and the love that I lost on the romantic level and everything. And so it's a very love and death type album theme. And the very first track is called Dawn FM, so he's basically setting us up for what the album is going to entail as a whole. And by the way, with the first track as well as the track at the end, as well as in the middle and everything, he has Jim Carrey featured on the album, which is absolutely mind-boggling, like, to me as a whole. I saw the trailer and the teaser for the album, basically telling about who the teasers were for and everything, and what was going to be on the album. And they said that Jim Carrey was going to be on it too. And I was like, what is Jim Carrey going to do? Because, like, what are you thinking when it comes to Jim Carrey? He can either be really, really serious or really, really funny. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. The album also features narration from Quincy Jones, who is a producer that got fame from Michael Jackson's Thriller album. He was one of the first African-American producers that got very commercial success with what was happening and how he was producing, according to GQ article that I read. And he is narrating kind of on the middle track of the album. And when he is narrating this, he has it kind of like over a similar type sonic track that is very reminiscent and kind of trying to set the pace of Dawn FM, but also trying to tell a story. It's called Tale by Quincy, so he's trying to set the mood. And then it goes right into Out of Time, which is the song right afterwards. And I saw a TikTok, funny little tiny tidbit. I saw a TikTok that said that, like, used Out of Time, which is on the record, and they said when you use the elevator music and sing over it, and I thought it was really funny because it does sound a little bit like elevator music, but I think it just depends on the context, but I thought it was really, really funny. So I just researched it a little bit, and his name on here is Lonnie Tunes, spelled LONNEY TOONS_. His full name is Jalen Miniweather, and he is putting out a Weeknd TikTok on here. I just wanted to make sure that he got credited with that so that I wasn't just saying that out in the void and he didn't get the credit for it. Now, I heard a lot of people talking and posting about this album and everything, and a lot of people didn't like it. They thought it sounded a little bit monotonous, and another thing that I will say, and I have to give him credit for, it is going to be hard, not just for The Weeknd, but with every artist, when you have a really, really good album to kind of, for the next album that you put out or the next work that you put out, to match that standard that you set with that. Because that's almost like when you put out a good album, it raises your standard, and pretty much almost some people think it's like the peak of where you are musically. So where are you supposed to go from there? Exactly. It just goes underneath. And so because now it's underneath the standard, you're going to be disappointed with it. Now, the reason why I think people believe this album sounds monotonous and everything is because it does, in a sense. The reason being is that it very much is kind of trying to paint a sonic picture of this kind of synthwave sunset where there's kind of these overtones of heartbreak and denial of death and everything. So not only that, but on the musical standpoint, a lot of these tracks like blend together a lot. And I love when albums do this. Like, I love when you have an intro that goes right into another track. I love when there's kind of like interludes at the end of songs that go into other tracks and everything. The only thing here that I think might be a turnoff for some people is that he does that with almost every single song. I remember listening to this in the car when it first came out and everything, and I was listening to it, and I like looked over, and it was already on another song because it like didn't stop. There was like no pause in between. I think that some listeners just need that pause in between tracks to kind of like really digest what they just heard and everything, like a little reset button. But a lot of these tracks just kind of like go right into one another to the point where you're like, you look at your phone and you're 3 tracks in and you didn't realize. Now, the few songs that I think are my favorites on here are, first of all, the lead single, Take My Breath. It's very, very catchy and everything, but they do a very cool extended mix on the album and everything. It's an extended version. On the tail end of How Do I Make You Love Me, they have like this kind of small interlude that leads into the intro of Take My Breath. And it's like a minute long intro and everything before Abel starts singing. But when he starts singing, it is so much of a payoff. Like I love it because there's so much build up and build up and build up to it, and you know it's coming, and you're like, okay, when's it gonna start? When's it gonna start? And then he like starts, and it hits. Not only that, but he follows it up. Like the middle part of the album is very, very strong. The middle part of the album, right after Take My Breath, he goes into Sacrifice, and he actually released a music video for this on the same day that the album released. Now, when he released the music video, I watched it and everything, and I don't know if the themes of what I just spewed out really reflect itself in the video, because that's what I was interpreting and everything, but for the most part, Abel makes these kind of very dark and brooding music videos for the most part. He's been doing it, I think, for a while. He did it with... the only times that I don't think he did like those kind of like very dark type music videos were for Can't Feel My Face. And I think he also didn't do it for a few of his songs on Starboy and everything. But even the title track, Starboy, it was still kind of darker, but it had a little bit more of a neon swagger to it. So that was the reason why it kind of was different. But then right after Sacrifice is the interlude of Tale by Quincy. And then it goes right into Out of Time, which is, I guess you could call it the elevator jam. But like that's a good tune as well. One of the other tunes on the album that I thought was really, really cool is There Someone Else? Now, I love when... Granted, some artists do this and they don't get away with it. I think Abel gets away with it here. Another song on here is called Is There Someone Else? He does the lead kind of melody at the beginning with a chopped vocal. And I love when artists do chopped vocals. Sometimes it can be a little bit rough, but for the most part, that's a pretty cool effect and everything. And the reason why this one's really cool is that it doesn't sound like, it's like a super smooth, like, and it's like slightly chopped to a point, which, by the way, that was my perfect singing voice. Thank you very much. But it's smooth and everything. It's a smooth chopped vocal. It's not like super, super choppy. That's supposed to be intentionally choppy and everything. Like it's, you know, it's supposed to be chopped, but they clip it like just cleanly enough for it to kind of really sound like it fits with the nature of the song and the album. Now, the song Every Angel is Terrifying is kind of interesting to me because it's a narration on behalf of Abel. Like the Weeknd himself is actually doing it. And he almost kind of pitches the idea of death, which is really, really interesting. And it's very much a talking piece from him. He's not singing at all. He has an instrumental behind him, but he's talking almost like Jim Carrey had been doing and like Quincy Jones had been doing. Just to kind of quote a little bit of some of the lines in Every Angel is Terrifying. He says, Critics say Afterlife makes your current life look like a total comatose snooze fest. It's action-packed, the future of everyone's fate. Nigel and Frank call it a classic. Arthur Fleminger says, I can't keep my eyes off the screen. Afterlife can be yours for only $4.95 with a subscription when you order the Best of Your Current Life collection series. So he's like pitching it, and then later on, like at the very, very end of it, he goes, the wait is over. Call 1-800-414-4444 to order Afterlife, plus shipping and handling and everything. So he's like pitching it, which is really, really funny and everything. But he's pitching it basically being like, okay, it's time to go now. It's time to walk into the light and move into the dawn. And I thought that was really funny that he did that, and that he made the choice to make it comedic. He's like pitching it, being like, hey, $4.95, but wait, there's more. Stick around for shipping and handling, and we'll even add in a slice of death too. It's like, okay, cool. Just pay shipping and handling. I'm not going to pay the shipping and handling. By the way, if you do pay for the shipping and handling, not to judge you, but if you pay for the TV stuff, please let me know how it is, because like, kind of sketches me out. I don't know how your shake weights are doing. But the final track on the album is Phantom Regret by Jim. That's the name of it. And it's the final narration from Jim Carrey on the album. And it's basically recapping, and it's a whole narration of how did you live your life. That was basically the summary of the track as a whole. To quote it a little bit, he says at the beginning, you're tuned to Dawn FM, the middle of nowhere on your dial, which I love that line so much. I love the middle of nowhere on your dial, because it's like, yeah, this is, oh my God. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, just stellar poetic line right there. But basically, he also says, now that all future plans have been postponed, and it's time to look back on the things you thought you owned. Do you remember them well? So things like that along those lines. It basically just encapsulates and recaps the whole album. The final 3 lines absolutely blow my mind, though. The last 3 lines are, in other words, you gotta be heaven to see heaven. May peace be with you. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know how I was saying at the beginning where Jim Carrey is like either really, really sad or really, really comedic? Yeah, we just got both. So, like, there we go. Maybe that was intentional. Maybe that was the reason why Abel got him on the album as a whole. But I thought Jim Carrey did a really cool job narrating on this album and everything. And basically the idea was that Dawn FM was this extended metaphor that was kind of like, this is the soundtrack to the end of your life, basically. And all the things that happened along the way and all the things that you're thinking about along the way and everything, which is a really, really cool concept as a whole. Now, that being said, we're going to recap. So, the themes of love and death on this album could have been slightly condensed a little bit with lesser songs and everything. But for the most part, really, really kind of solid outing. I will say that I still am a little bit more of a fan of his last outing, After Hours, but I still think that this has a lot of fun tunes on it that I could add to quite a few playlists and everything. And I kind of enjoy it. And it's an album that I could kind of vibe to in a little bit, as long as I vibe to the songs that I have liked on my Spotify. But I definitely encourage you to go and check it out if you haven't already. See for yourself, see if you're on board with it. Let me know what you think about it as well. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Why or why not? Do let me know what your thoughts are on it as well. You can find me on my social media. My one thing that I have on there is Instagram, and it's whomstuffareyou. That is my Instagram handle, spelled WHOMSTVEAREYOU. That is what that is, and I will be posting a little bit more, so make sure that you are following on Spotify and follow on Apple Podcasts so that you don't miss when an episode is coming out. Thank you so much for joining on the first episode. Be good to yourself. Happy listening. And most importantly, did I say it already? Be good to yourself.